proverb that the light of good deed shines in the moments of darkness. The light of good deed even shines in the most depressing moments of darkness. These two and many other similar proverbs and sayings that we perhaps have heard before, they are not just proverbs or sayings, but they have profound meanings as well. And they are such that we see even the essence of that, the basis of that in religious traditions and teachings. Not only Islam, but also a number of previous religious dispensations, religious traditions. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, on this note, on different occasions, narrated different stories to us, for us to learn many moral, spiritual, and social lessons. And what I have said in terms of the saying, I want to narrate a story from the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that really serves the essence of the beautiful English saying that I have quoted to you. The good you do, it never goes waste, but it also comes back to you to benefit you. In Islam, dear brothers and sisters, we have the faith that all what we are required to do is not just for sake of the requirement that we have to fulfill, but the benefit always returns to the person who continues to do so and who continues to remain firm on those teachings. So in the end, at the end of the day, the benefit returns to the person. And this will be clearly manifested as we listen to this story that I want to narrate to you. And this story comes from the people of the past that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam narrated, through the divine revelation to Sahaba Rizwanullahi alaihim ajma'in. And it is in human nature that we all love stories, because stories serve as a powerful reminder and a connection between the past and the present. And it shows and it serves as a medium for us to look through the window of the past, the present of our own self and our own lives, and then extract relevant lessons to imply those lessons to approve our own behavior, morality and spirituality, etc. And for this reason, as Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, Shaykh al-Islam, the great scholar in our tradition, said, 1/3 of the Quran serves as the stories of the people of the past, like Thuluth al-Quran. And like I said, there is a reason for Allah to narrate those tales and stories. Similarly, Rasulullah also has narrated a number of stories from the people of the past for us to reflect upon. And this story that I'm going to share with you is a very sound narration, is not something weak, let alone it being fabricated. It is the story that is found in Bukhari and Muslim and other books of hadith. Ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhuma reports that once Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sitting with us, and then he said, "Let me tell you a story from among the people of the past." And then he started narrating the story. And the story as it goes, you may have heard this before, but of course the reason I'm repeating it so that we refresh if we know, or we learn if we don't know. So Rasulullah said, ثَلَاثَةُ نَفَرٍ مِمَّنْ كَانَ قَبْلَكُمْ. There were 3 individuals from the people of the past, and they traveled together. Back in those days, today, subhanAllah, you generally, not you as a person, but the modern times is such that people have the luxury to travel alone, because when you travel, you are not necessarily traveling alone because of the advanced technology and mode of transportation that you have. You are with someone or group of people, but you may be as an individual. But in the past, people used to travel in caravans collectively for the security reasons. And it wasn't easy for people to even to take this undertaking because it would be very challenging for people. So these three individuals, when they set out on a journey and they traveled, and as they traveled, they passed through jungle and mountain area. So there was a heavy rain. As the heavy rain started to fall, they couldn't find any proper shelter to protect themselves, so they looked for a place, and that led them to see a cave on the mountain. And when they saw the cave, they took refuge in that. But because of the heavy rain and thunder, perhaps that the lightning and whatnot, it caused one of the boulder and big rock to move from its place and roll down. As it rolled down, it basically rolled down towards the cave entrance, and it landed exactly on the entrance of the cave, closing the entrance of the cave itself. So when it rolled down and closed the entrance, there was no second entrance or exit for them to get out of that. And you can imagine, as we live in this very beautiful province of British Columbia, surrounded by mountains and trees and nature, and I'm sure we have seen things like that. Even when you drive on the highway, you see there is this, subhanAllah, this very thick iron made of protection that they have, so that if anything that falls as a piece of rock, so it doesn't really block the driveway, the highway, right? So that was the situation for them that they found themselves in. Now they were worried, how are we going to get out, because it wasn't a small piece of rock that they could move themselves. It was a big boulder, a big piece of rock that closed the entire entrance. So one of them said to their travel mates, we are now in this situation and there doesn't seem to be any way out except for the divine intervention. Turning to Allah, turning to our Creator and seeking for His help, praying for Him and asking Him for help. That's exactly what he said to them. But what he said in that was, each one of us should think of a deed, a good deed that we have done in the past, and that was something very remarkable, extraordinary, but we did that for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we think of that good deed, then use that as a medium of intercession to seek the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So seeking the intercession through the righteous deed that you have done in the past, asking Allah for an opening and help for us to get out of this situation. That was the advice that he gave to his friends. Each one turned to Allah and prayed as follows. So the first person said, Allah, there was a time, a day in my life, because as being shepherd, I used to graze my livestock and take them in the jungle and would do the grazing and would return. So one day in the search of livelihood, I went too far away and I was not able to return home on time. So I had elderly parents. Of course, my children, my family was also with me, at home. So by the time I got home, my routine was to milk the goats and then serve my parents first and then serve to my family and my slaves and servants. So on this day when I returned home late, by the time I arrived, I noticed my parents both went to sleep hungry without having the share of milk that they would normally drink at night as the meal. So when I saw the situation, of course I prepared, and as a routine, I didn't feel comfortable to serve my family first before my parents. To serve my family first before my parents, and even including the children. So he said that I stood by the side of their bed, waiting perhaps they will wake up any moment, and I would offer the milk to them. So I waited the whole night. They were in such a deep sleep that they did not wake up until the morning. And as they woke up in the morning, it was only then that I was able to offer this milk to them. But in the meantime, my whole family was, of course, crying and agitated because I did not offer this to them. Now pause here, this wasn't a religious ruling. This was something that he made his own judgment that, I should, because of my routine, I should serve my parents first before I offer it to my family. It wasn't a religious ruling. Of course, when it comes to religion, we have everything clearly laid out. Who deserves first, who deserves second, and who has the right more on our things than anybody else. But this was the judgment that he made on his own, and it just shows the level of ikhlas, sincerity, and filial piety that he had towards his parents. And when he did this, imagine the whole night standing. The best of the best people, generally speaking, can't even imagine thinking of something like this, at this level of obedience to the parents and respect for them, standing and spending the whole night by the bed and waiting for them, and even to a point that, depriving their own family members from the very essential thing, something like food. But he did that. So he said, Ya Allah, I did this. If you think that there was a sincerity in my action, that I did what I did, and it was to please you and to serve my parents, if you think and if you see ikhlas in this, please accept this good deed and make this as an intercession and medium for us and for me to get out of this situation. And it is interesting that what he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of his generosity and compassion, accepted, and then there was movement in the boulder, and like 1/3 of it moved. So each person, as he made dua accordingly, it was an effect on it. So when they saw it, it was a kind of sign of hope for them. So then the second person turned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, recalling one of those occasions in his life. And then he said, Oh Allah, I had a cousin of mine who was very, of course, she was a female, and I had a lot of, I was infatuation with her. I had loved her as a man loves a woman. And of course, I wanted to have my way with her in terms of my desire, but she always refused because it was not halal. There came a time in her life that she was very desperate for financial help because of the famine and this financial crisis that she underwent. It reached to a point that she broke completely, and then she also broke emotionally, and she had no other way to survive except to come back to me seeking for help again. So when she did that, so I saw that as an opportunity for me to take advantage of the situation. I said, I can only help you if you yield yourself to me, allowing me to have yourself for myself, to enjoy yourself, to enjoy and to have intercourse with you. So in the fit of the difficulty, she could not see any way other than this to submit and to accept. She said, okay. And of course they agreed, and then I offered about 120 gold coins to her as a way to help her. And when she gave that to me, when I gave that to her, she accepted, and of course I was about to make my move and almost about to have my desires fulfilled through this way. Then she reminded me that, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fear Allah, and do not do anything that will be a cause of great regret and remorse and pain and suffering for you in the after, except for a halal way. So when she said that, it hit me home, saying, she being in the extreme state of destitute, when she was not able to even find anything to eat and survive, yet she thinks of Allah and fears Allah. I myself, having everything to my luxury and privilege, how can I not think of Allah, and how can I not fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So it really struck me. So I left her, and then I left what I gave her out of my fear to you and out of my respect to you. So he said, oh Allah, if you think I have done this for your sake and out of my ikhlas to you, so please accept this and make an opening for us from this difficult situation. So this was the dua that he made, and accordingly there was a movement, and there was another opening, about 1/3 of the entrance of the cave. So there was further hope for them, but the opening that they had, they were not able to get out of that. It wasn't not enough for them to see the exit out of the cave. So the last person who was in the group, he also recalled going through the life account. He saw one occasion in which he thought that that would be perfect for me to use to intercede Allah through that righteous deed of him. So he said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Rab, I had once a number of servants, ajir, ujara, ummal, to serve me. So I set wages for them if they worked for me the whole day. And one of the individuals who had worked for me, when it came to make the payment, I paid him, but he didn't accept. He left the payment, he went away. So I insisted him to take, but he didn't accept it. He left. And I was waiting, he didn't come. Time went by. There came a point that he didn't return. So the wages that I owed him, I had reinvested that in my business. And subhanAllah, lo and behold, that portion of the wages that I reinvested, it really caused my business to flourish abundantly. The portion that I supposed to pay him, which he did not accept, I invested back that in my business venture, and it caused my business to really flourish exponentially, went beyond the imagination. And then this individual, after many years, somehow returned one day. And when he returned, he reminded me of the day that he had served me and reminded me of the wages that I owed him. And said, please help me and return my wages because I'm in need of it. So when he came back, oh Lord, thinking of the benefit that I got out of his share. Not only that, I was just willing to pay his wages, rather I said, yes, I remember, and then all what you see as in my business, in terms of goats and sheep and camels and pastures and whatnot, all of these things are yours. You can take all of them. All of these are yours. Businessmen are sitting here. People of profession are sitting here. Money is very tempting, right? I do get complaints many a times in terms of wages, wages in terms of, for example, those who are not legally working, how they are exploited also. That's another issue, right? Trying the best to cut the wages, to pay the minimum, to get the maximum profit out of that. That is not the Islamic way. It is haram, immoral, and also socially very, very ill and evil to treat any human being in that manner. Any human being, forget about Muslim brothers or sisters. How low have we gone when we look at the stories like this? How far have we drifted away from our own, subhanAllah, standards and teachings of the religion? It is very sad. And no wonder this is why we are, in such a mess, in so many problems surrounding us. If we get out of one, we find other one waiting for us as if to catch us and to trap us. Because you get what you give. You pay for your own sins. You pay for your own sins. That's the reality of life. So this individual, look at him, his akhlaq, look at him, his sincerity, and his care. He could have simply paid his own share. Of course, it was perfectly fine. It was not a religious requirement for him to return each and everything what he had. But being honest with himself and with the person, if he were to invest this share, he could have got all of this what I got. That means that he deserved this. So when he made this judgment and decision, that means he was going to go back to complete zero investment situation, losing all what he gained. It wasn't an easy call to make. Yet he made, why? Because he wanted to do that for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The one who gave me this through this, he can give me without any of these things as well. It is just the matter of pleasing the one who is the source of every khair, every opportunity, and every benefit in one's life. So when we make those types of very difficult decisions in very tempting moments, they really hit home. They really become the source of great ecstasy and pleasure to the person and also the Creator. So when he used this, the remaining boulder that was there to block their passage, it completely moved away, and there was as if nothing happened on the entrance. And they were able to find a safe passage exit out of the situation. So this is the story that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam narrated. And when he narrated this, of course he narrated it for a reason. Like I said, whatever we have in our deen, whether it is in the Quran or in the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they are to serve as a precedence, as a moral compass, as a mean and medium for us to connect ourselves to the people of these calibers, to be like them, or to at least tread their path, to be similar to them, if not the same. That's the goal. So, very briefly, just a few important lessons that we can learn from this, dear brothers and sisters. The first and foremost lesson that we learn from this story in particular, number one, is the importance of ikhlas. You know, this is something that we have been hearing over and over again. Every now and then you hear in the khutbah, maintaining ikhlas, improving ikhlas, having sincerity in your actions. You will see the benefit of that in light of this story. Right? Although you do things in different ways, but if your sole purpose is to please only one and only, that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the one you do it for, you will find him in the most difficult times that you need him for. That's the most important lesson that we learn. Second thing that we learn as a lesson from this story is, Ya Latif, when we think of ikhlas, generally we think of prayer, we think of fasting, right? We think of salah and siyam and zakat and hajj. We do not normally think of mundane human activities when it comes to ikhlas, because it is between one human to another human being, interactions, dealings. In these three different stories that we have heard, it wasn't about prayer. It wasn't about fasting. May Allah forgive me first and foremost. As much as you think I pray better, but my character will prove how I interact with others. My maqam will be determined according to how I see others, how I treat others, because each one is the makhluk of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Rasulullah said, أَحَبُّ الْخَلْقِ إِلَى اللَّهِ subhanahu wa ta'ala. Among all the people, the ones who are very dear to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are those who treat others with dignity and respect like they themselves want to be treated. The very way they want to be treated. The very way they want to be treated. أَنْفَعُهُمْ لِعِيَالِهِ كَمَا قَالَ عَلَيْهِ الصَّلَاةُ وَالسَّلَامُ. And they become the source of benefit, not the source of pain and suffering and grief to others. If we really learn this one lesson, just this one lesson, it will change the whole world demographics. The whole world. If this one lesson is to be learned. We want to be treated the best, but however, we want to treat others the worst. That's the problem. So, in mundane and human activities, ikhlas is equally important. You saw in the first case, filial piety, showing great respect, reverence to the parents, to a point that he served them first at the cost of discomfort and also suffering of his own family and himself. And in the second, we see this temptation. We have youngsters sitting here. It is not easy oftentimes to resist the temptation. But if you do, you see in light of this story, the hope for you to gain such a maqam as this individual gained in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can become the Yusuf of your time through the character that Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam showcased. Right? It is a matter of that weak movement. If you succeed to resist, you become successful. But if you give up to your own detriment to destroy your own iman and ruhaniyat. And it's a vicious cycle of trap of shaitan and nafs that you will never be able to get out of that. You just have to make that strong decision. I'm not going to succumb. I'm not going to fail. I'm not going to give up. That one strong determination will succeed you, as he did that. And in the third verse, we see the temptation of money. As they say, money matters the most in the West, right? And I said, the rat race that we have in the society, globally, especially in the West, is all about how I can rip the other person off the most to make myself the billionaire. Shaykh Abul Hasan Ali Nadwi rahimahullah ta'ala, one of the great scholars of our recent past, he said, the world has become a global casino today. The world has become a global casino today that everyone's eye is on the pocket of the other person, not the heart of the other person. How I can get out of the money out of his pocket. Maybe it could be the person who would be crying and suffering pain in the case of some of these individuals we see. Yet, for me, what matters is the money. All what it matters is money. Right? This is why people have become so over obsession, this over obsession of, profession. They do not want to do anything, voluntarily. Everything has to be by money. Everything has to be by money. This is very sad. The religion that we are part of, it is the religion of sincerity and service, not selfishness. It's a religion of selflessness, right? At least whatever profession you do, take some time just as a volunteer service to benefit others. And you will see how it will change and shape your profession. How it will change you and shape your profession. So that's an important lesson that we learn. And another important lesson that we learn is that seeking intercession through righteous deed. It is highly recommended, as we see in this. Because Rasulullah ﷺ narrated this story for us to learn the lesson that, any good deed that you do with such ikhlas and to, subhanAllah, to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that action of yours can be used to save you and to solve you and to get you out of the problem. وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَل لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. And yet these individuals, they used one of the good deeds and then used, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped. So muhaddithin comment on this hadith saying, هَذَا مُسْتَحَبٌ. This is desirable for you to use any of the righteous deeds, use that as an intercession, wasila, and ask Allah for help. And another important lesson that we learn out of this is that as much as we do all of these things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is also important not to fully rely on that. Rather we say, oh Allah, this is what I did, if you think it is worthy of your consideration, because it brings humility in our lives. Right? It brings humility in our life. So you use that as a wasila, but at the same time you don't brag on it. Rather you say, Allah, if this is something worthy of consideration, please accept it and make this a sabab for me to get out of my situation. And last but not least, if these virtues that I have spoken about, rather this story talks about, if this is to be practiced, in a society, the whole society will flourish. And in a summation, what they are all about, filial piety, respect and service to elders. And second is, subhanAllah, chastity. Chastity is something very, very integral, but yet it is very much lacking today in our time. And last but not least, honesty. Filial piety, chastity and honesty. If these qualities are prevalent in any society, that society will be like a shining star in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are the lessons. Let's revive, because as we are going through depressing, difficult times, this is why one of the ulama, they say, commenting on this hadith, we should all have a reserve of such good deeds that you could have in your account to use them as a mean to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help. So have enough of such hasanat, such a'mal, so that you could use them in times of your difficulty. Let's build that record and raise the bar and be among those who are, mashallah, among the people who have many options to use to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah give us tawfiq to act upon what has been said. May He allow us to relate to the story and extract the relevant lessons to enrich our life and morality and spirituality. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا